So we're just gonna go over the first one right now, and then we'll do the same thing for the next one, and we'll discuss each one of them. So can anyone pronounce the first one? I had trouble.
In English?
Yeah.
Miserliness.
Miserliness. It's a nice word. And if for those who read, all these diseases are not in accordance to like ranking as in like the worst disease you could have or, you know, the easiest to cure. It's actually from all the Arabic, like the words in Arabic, they just had them alphabetized. Just so you guys would know. So if you guys find something interesting, you know, you could always flip around. But we're going to start with miserliness. Would anyone like to read the poem in the beginning? I'm looking at Nupta.
I
She
can.
looks like
No.
she's ready. Go ahead, Fawad.
All the red, right?
Yeah.
Now, then, the refusal to give what is obliged according to sacred law. Oh, beginning. Oh. Which beginning?
You're good.
Miserliness.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
well,
fine.
yeah, I just started looking around like I was like. Alright. To sacred law or to virtuous merit in the essence of miserliness, which is mentioned among the diseases of the heart. As for the obligations of sacred law, there are such things as zakat, supporting one's dependents and rights due to others, and relieving the distressed. Examples of virtuous merit include not nitpicking or trivialities. Avoiding this is even more important with respect to a neighbor, a relative, or a wealthy person, or when hosting guests, or concerning something in which such behavior is inappropriate, such as pursuing a burial shroud or a sacrificial animal, or purchasing something you intend to donate to the needy. Thus, one who makes matters difficult for one whose rights clearly render this inappropriate to do so, such as a neighbor, has indeed torn away from the veils of dignity. This is as the majestic and guiding sages have stated. This is comparable to one who fulfills his obligations without good cheer or who spends from the least of what he possesses. Its root is love of this world for its own sake, or so that the self can acquire some of its fleeting pleasures.
Good job, Fawad. So, in these verses of poem, it pretty much summarizes it, what it means, and then, you know, it goes on to specify it. So, can someone point out what the first one is? Come on, I want this to be interactive. Like, what is the first thing that he mentioned in the poem? Refusal to give. Is that the first one? Yeah.
Yeah.
We could just go out of order. Do you find anything in there? Can someone get that doing?
One is like refusal to give what you have to, and the other is like a refusal to be like generous, or like when you're hosting your guests.
Mm-hmm. And that's what miserliness is. It's pretty much like being cheap, but not really. It's being cheap to a certain extent that, you know,
When others are involved.
yeah, you know, when, you know, just like the guest thing. And if you guys listen
When
to,
you don't fulfill other people's rights.
yeah,
Or
so,
that you are obliged to fulfill.
mm-hmm. And like zakat, which it specifies and it changes the font and shows you. But things like that, where, you know, other people are involved, or if anyone heard the audio lecture by Hamza Yusuf, he mentioned when someone had a guest over and, you know, they accidentally spill, like, you know, coffee or some drink on your carpet, and you get mad at them, that still constitutes some miserliness, as in, you know, you kind of shame them, you know, you go like, why'd you do that? Like, you get mad at them and everything like that, and that also constitutes to this. And that's not my words, that's Hamza Yusuf talking in the audio. And also, what else? And also about the purchasing a burial shroud. How some people, when there's more bigger things than money, especially when there's a death involved, people still try to be stingy with it. And that's not the point of a burial and everything like that. The point is you remembering death and you remembering that, life is such a precious thing, not this worldly thing of just money and like that taking you over. I think that's about it. There's still some more. Do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna look at the definitions.
Okay.
Of money. Webster definition.
Don't look at.
It's excessive, what you said basically. Excessive desire to save money, extreme meanness, whatever. But it's in the context that Raghib said. I guess that's more in the context of what Raghib's definition was through Hamza Yusuf's words.
And another thing mentioned is, fulfilling the rights of others. And even when, someone owes you money, especially when they also, specifically talk about money in this case, and they say when someone owes you money, but you're at that state of, wealth that small amount of money does not even affect you, but you make it a big deal. And that's something we should also avoid. Even though it's your right, like that's your right to take that money, but if this person is, economically not able to give you that money, then you shouldn't push for it. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Any questions about it?
I think that it's in the second to last part of the poem. This is comparable to one who this miserliness is comparable to one who fulfills his obligations without good cheer. That kind of shows you that not giving or not giving enough is similar to giving but not giving in a good way. So you're very resistant to it. You don't make it like maybe if someone owes you money, then you make it, or if you owe someone money, then you make it a lengthy process. You can do it, but you never go about doing it. And so and then when you finally give it, you give it grudgingly. You give it without good cheer, and then that's something that's similar to being miserly in the first place. And miserliness is also comparable to one who spends the least of what he possesses. So you give, but you can give more.
Like one other thing, if you look on page 25, it says that Imam Ali, he says that the worst person is the miser. In this world, he's deprived of his own wealth, and in the hereafter, he's punished. And one thing that kind of reminded me of is all of us don't necessarily have wealth or the bank that we're holding and not giving out and stuff. But when I was a little kid, when I was in 3rd grade, we went on a vacation to Florida, right? And we rented a villa there. And in the cereal box, I got a free CD game, and I didn't want my brother to have it, and I wanted it for myself. So I hid it in a drawer, and then we left the villa, and I left my game there too. So I never got to play it. So it's kind of like exactly what he's talking about, right? Like how I didn't get to play the game, and I didn't have it, but neither just because I didn't want to give it to my brother, just because how brothers are but then in the end who loses, right? I still lose, but I think that type of example is good too, just so you can really see, because it's not always money. It's even just the way you interact with people. You can be a miser. So.
And also right above that page, it speaks about, I'll just read it. The Prophet ﷺ said, God has made what is excreted from the son of Adam a metaphor for the world, for the dunya. When one is hungry, he seeks out food, eats, and is pleased. But when it leaves the body, it is the most odious of things. Giving zakat is letting go of a portion of one's wealth to purify all of one's other assets. and ultimately one's soul. So pretty much, the zakat you give purifies, what it's saying is it purifies not only your money, but it purifies your soul. It makes you more generous, and it makes you, realize that this is not, like, the money you make is not just from you, it's from Allah. You can't do anything without, like, Allah's will. Like, if Allah wills it, then all your money is going to be gone tomorrow. And you giving up that money for the sake of, the poor people in, our community or, around the world, is you making that impurity in your money pure. And what it also went into in the audio was, if you have like a shak, like if you have like a doubt. How did I not know it in English? But anyways, if you have like a doubt of your money not being like, straight, like halal, like if you feel like you did something to get that money in a wrong way, zakat is still a way to kind of purify that as well. But that doesn't mean like, for a fact that all you do is sell, alcohol or something like that, and you're just like, oh, maybe if I give this zakat, then, my money will be okay. It's like the small things that you don't realize.
So yeah, like I think like what he said was like the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
like impurities. So like say you get money from someone, of course, like you're not doing anything wrong, but maybe the money has a backstory. So.
I don't think we
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about treatment.
Yeah, so do you know that what's the guy? Hoja, what's his name? The church. Yeah, that's the Hoja. Yeah, so it's like this like folkloric character, right? And like Muslim history, like story. He has a lot of funny stories and stuff. You know, like the one story about like when he was like walking on the road and there was like a pile of like poop there. Alright, well, pretty much like, like when you read that, it reminded me of that how he was with, I think it was him, like he was with a bunch of like students and stuff, and then they were walking on the dirt road, right, and there's like a pile of dung there, and like everyone went to the opposite side of the road, but then he stayed there, like he was talking to the like the dung, so he's like, why is everyone running away from me when I'm like that which they sought so much, like. Because we always like want the fanciest food, we eat a lot, we want everything from this dunya, but then in the end, like when it comes out, then we don't want it anymore, right? Because it's obviously like it's odious, it smells bad, it's nasty. So I really like that example of this because that story reminded me of that. And then like he gets into a whole conversation with the students, but I don't remember it. You guys can look it up.
So the treatment is quite simple, and that's, self-realization of what you're doing. That's what I got out of it. Did anyone get something else out of that? It's just realizing your duties, and also realizing, even though it is something that is a right to you, if you're able to, just let it go.
And the fact that it's a very like unattractive quality amongst just people, like you don't want to be friends with someone who's a miser, and so why would you want to be a miser?
And misers themselves don't
misers
like other
don't like
misers.
yeah.
Did you guys want to discuss more about miserness, or should we move on to the next disease? Let's move on. Fawn's moving on. Alright, baby, you want to take that? If you want, we could get someone else to say the poem real quick, just so we could all hear it. Anyone? No, get someone else.
I can read it.
Go ahead, Dalia.
As for the disease of wantonness, its definition is excessive mirth, which, according to the people of knowledge, is having excessive exuberance. Treat it with hunger and the remembrance of the hereafter, reminding yourself that God says he does not love the excessively joyful, which alone is a distress.
So does anyone know the definition for wantonness? Anyone want to look it up? What's laptop? Just so they can read it.
Laptop definition. The trait of lacking restraint or control, reckless freedom from inhibition or worry, stuff.
So pretty much like not caring about anything and just doing whatever you want. That's what I kind of got out of it. So like I mentions over here, like reckless extravagance and let me just refresh my memory. Yeah, so like, I think like the importance of like controlling this disease really goes into play with the whole purification of the heart in general, because in order to not be have that reckless, I'll do whatever I want, excessive attitude, you have to what? You have to do what to yourself?
Humble yourself.
Yeah,
Control yourself.
Yeah, humble, control, discipline yourself, right? So in order to discipline yourself, you abstain from certain things, you force yourself to do things the other way, and how it mentions over here for like one example, how like in all the different ways of thinking of the ancient Greeks, Chinese, the Arabs, like the belief that too much food harms yourself spiritually, right? And also, obviously now how we know now scientifically, like health-wise too, and how it used to be a commonly held belief that people who ate a lot, they developed a hard heart, and by a hard heart, like they didn't care that much about what was going around them. And also, Sheikh Hamza mentions how also it's a cause of the hardening of the arteries also. And when you control yourself from food, which is what we do like every Ramadan, right? Whenever we fast, we control ourselves from food, and in order to do what?
Get closer to Allah.
Get closer to Allah by doing what?
Becoming better people.
Yeah. What would you say?
Giving up something you love to do.
Exactly. So giving up something. So when you desire food, you tell yourself, no, I'm not going to eat it, right? Because for the pleasure of Allah, I'm not going to eat it, so I can get close to Allah. So yeah. And that's like, at least what I got from this was like the realization of how, a lot of times we, our attitudes fluctuate. Sometimes we care a lot, sometimes we don't care, sometimes we're like, whatever, I'm just going to do me, it doesn't matter. So like pretty much with this, that's like a sort of disease which you want to really discipline yourself in order to always be in that state of control. So it's not necessarily like your desires which are like controlling yourself, like I'll do whatever I want, because that's like your nafs talking, but it's like I'll do what is right, or I'll do what I need to do in order to get to where I want to go to. So in essence, it's disciplining yourself. Do you guys have anything to say about that?
My non-Muslim friends, whenever they know that I was fasting for Ramadan, they would always ask me how you could do that. And I, at first, I didn't really think about it, but after a while, I think I tried to once, outside Ramadan, just to lose weight or something, and I couldn't do it. And it's if you do it for Allah, it's so much different than if you did it for yourself. So it makes it easier, doable.
Yeah. Definitely. And like the treatment for this too is to fast and to really because when you think about it, when we fast in Ramadan, right, everyone knows that everyone's fasting, right? The whole world knows. But if you just fast randomly without telling anybody and only you know, then it's kind of a different experience in which you can really get close to Allah. And no one knows you're fasting. You go about your regular day. It's in the middle of the week or whenever it is, and then you really know that the only reason I'm doing this is to get close to Allah. It's not like any other pressure that's influencing that. And it really helps. So I guess when we practice, because we're gonna practice every week to try to purify ourselves from the diseases that we cover. So maybe one thing everyone can do is fast. One of the days.
And it doesn't always have to be just fasting. I'm not trying to disagree with you a bit.
Yeah.
But it also means just being excessive in a sense, like, you know, like I could put myself on the spot saying, you know, it's like buying a lot of clothes, even though I don't want them. Or, like, I want them, but I don't need them, you know. It's not a need, and that's something, you know, I could teach myself to control. Or get my, like, you know, force myself somehow to control. Maybe donate some of my clothes, because you don't really need that many clothes, but, you know, it's just something that your heart kind of wants. And if that's something your heart wants, then, you know, it kind of shows you what kind of person you are. And going on about that is, you know how some people you notice have huge weddings, and you're just like, I'm not sure if they could really afford that, you know? But they do that just to kind of show off, just to show, you know, all their relatives or all their family, like, look how great my wedding was. It was so much better than, you know, your cousins or yours or, you know, whatever. And then they later realize once the credit card bill hits, you know, they're like, oh, dang, I shouldn't have done that. But that's another thing that this disease goes on into.
You guys know how, like, it mentions in the first page about how all the civilizations that were here before us and how the ruins are just left there? Like, you know, you always, like, hear stuff like that, but I didn't really realize it until, like, one time I saw, like, when there were a bunch of houses, right, in this one area, and then within, like, a couple of weeks, all those houses were torn down, and the only thing left there was a green field of grass. It's like the houses were never there, right? And it's just crazy to think about, like, the field outside your house might have had, like, some ancient house there before, you know? And, like, how we're all just here so momentarily, that all these, like, you know, small things, like showing off on weddings isn't really anything of significance in the end at all. Do you guys have any stories or any relations? Because it's more of a discussion halaqa. It's not really like a lesson halaqa. So, speak up.
Other ways, other than what Obaid said and what Raghab said, like fasting and controlling yourself, I guess another spiritual way is to, like, making dhikr or remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter, and I guess controlling our desires through, like, I guess what it says over here, just lost it, I guess. Freeing the heart of diseases like wantonness requires a remembrance of the hereafter and its various states and tumultuous scenes. For example, one should reflect on the state of the grave, which will either be a parcel of paradise or a pit of hell. Once a person dies, his journey in the hereafter begins. Meditation on the hereafter requires learning more about its various stations and passages, including the traverse, the sirat, over which people must cross and behold the awesome inferno of hell. So basically, consistent reflection of who we are and, like, counting our blessings and stuff can free us up from wantonness. Or whatever, how you wantonness, something like that.
Just click the speaker.
Back quickly to fasting. You know, it's not the, I guess the most forefront aspect of it is that, you know, you don't eat, you don't drink during the day, but, you know, proper Islam, and I'm sure all of you've heard this before, but, you know, it includes restraining your tongue, restraining, you know, your other senses, your hands from doing things that you shouldn't be doing, that wouldn't please Allah. So you shouldn't speak harshly. You know, you shouldn't, I don't know, I guess get into fights or arguments, more so than usual. And so that kind of control can also be applied to restraining wantonness. Like, if you have someone that's really just talking a lot, they say whatever comes to mind without regard for the consequences, then that can be a destructive habit. And so that kind of thing, saying what's good, is something that you can keep in mind to better yourself.
Yeah. And like one thing, if you notice, like all of these diseases, when you purify them from yourselves, like you take them out of yourself, like what happens? You become a better person. Like, so in essence, like that's what the whole point of this is, so we can become better people and get closer to Allah. Anyone else have anything to say about wantonness? Huh? It reminds me of like a Chinese food.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, wonton.
The rappers actually make good samosas, like a show. Yeah.
And like how Obaid was saying, and even before we started this halaqa, we said, one of the goals or one of the things that we're going to try to do throughout this halaqa, throughout the semester, is try to implement it. And in the book, it also mentions one of the best ways is to fast. And it even says, just 3 times a month, which is not that bad. And like Dalia was saying, I don't want to put you out there, but, like how she was saying she was trying to fast, but, she's doing it for something else. But if you do it for the sake of Allah and for the intention of getting rid of this disease, then, inshallah, it would be much easier for all of us to do. So if you guys want, we could all try to do a three day, and don't tell anyone about it. And even if you don't want to, just don't mention it. We'll all just pretend we're all doing it. But just don't ask anyone if they want something to eat before Maghrib. But, that's something we could try to implement. Maybe starting this month, maybe starting next month.
So, as soon as possible before the sun.
Yeah.
The days get longer.
And also that's, starting with 3 days is not bad. Even if, just start with once a month, But you got to start somewhere. Don't try to fast every other day, because that's not going to happen. Especially if you don't have that routine already set. If you already fast once a day or once every other day, then you do you. But if this is something new to you, like it is to me, it's like if you're gonna make that intention and you're just gonna feel worse. You're just like, oh man, I can't even do this. Then how do you want me to get rid of this disease? Like you'll just put yourself down, and that's not what we're trying to do here.
And even if it's not like fasting full on, like if you just like avoid some foods or like avoid like eating too much, like, a lot of times like we eat so much that like our bellies are like popping.
You feel bad.
I don't know about you guys, but I know like we do that. But like just like eat to like a point where you're like content, but you could still eat more. I feel like that's like the perfect like balance. Like that's like what we should try to aim for. Like in the process, someone like mentioned how we should have like 1/3 for air, 1/3 for water, 1/3 for food. Like even just doing that, if you're not fasting, really helps out a lot too. So.
And also what Mugab said is, along with fasting or not with fasting, controlling your tongue, controlling other aspects that you feel like are not good for yourself and others.
Yeah, because if when you think about it, like wantonness is like the absence of discipline in yourself, right? You're doing whatever you want, and when you're fasting, not only are you controlling your food, but you're also controlling your tongue that might speak out randomly at times, and like you're
inappropriately.
Yeah, or like you're controlling everything. So it's just like the best like sword to use against wantonness.
Any questions about that before we move on to hatred? No? Okay. Does anyone want to read the poem? Go ahead, Rita.
Another disease is hatred for other than the sake of God, the exalted. Its cure is to pray for the one despised. This is with the understanding that you have not done wrong if you are repulsed by the hatred you harbor, and do not act in accordance with it to harm the person.
So I'd like to skip ahead to the hadith on page 31, on the next page from the poem. So in a beautiful and profound hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "None of you has achieved faith until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself." The 13th scholar, Imam an-Nawawi, comments on this hadith saying, when the Prophet ﷺ says brother, we should interpret this as a universal brotherhood, which includes Muslims and non-Muslims. For one should desire for his brother non-Muslim that he enter into the state of submission with his Lord, Islam. And for his brother Muslim, he should love him for the continuation of guidance, and that he remain in submission. Because of this, it is considered highly recommended and divinely rewarding to pray for a non-Muslim's guidance. The word love here refers to a desire for good and benefit to come to others. This love is celestial or spiritual love, and not earthly love or human love. For human nature causes people to desire harm to befall their enemies, and to discriminate against those who are unlike them, in creed or color or character, for instance. But men must oppose their nature and pray for their brothers and desire for others what they desire for themselves. Moreover, when a man does not desire good for his brother, it is from envy, and envy is a rejection of God's appointment in the world. Thus, one opposing how God meted out the sustenance in concord with his wisdom. Therefore, one must oppose his own ego's desire and seek treatment for this disease with the healing force of acceptance of the divine decree and prayers on behalf of one's enemies in a way that suppresses their ego, their nafs. So that was a big chunk of text, but that's, it's a really lofty goal for one to set for oneself, and it's hard to pray for someone when you feel like that they've done a lot, and you might feel like they don't deserve that guidance, but I guess you just have to realize that what we make limited judgments based on our biases from our experiences, and so when we pray for him, then we're it's an act of goodwill, of trust in Allah, that we trust his judgment, and that that we're not infected with the hatred and the envy that would cause us to wish bad on someone.
Like the whole chapter, how it reminded me of this one poem, like a part of the poem by Rumi, where he says, when someone criticizes or disagrees with you, a small ant of hatred and antagonism is born in your heart. If you do not squash that ant at once, it might grow into a snake or even a dragon. If you guys know, if someone does something to you, and you just harbor that small thing, and you keep letting it grow and grow and grow and grow, you end up hating that person for no reason. So how we should always, if someone does something wrong, if someone steps on your favorite pair of shoes or whatever it might be that gets you going, you should try to just forgive them and be more merciful at that moment, because a lot of times we might not forget, or might not forgive, and that just leads to more and more bad things, because once you start disliking that person, then you become annoyed by them, then what you're going to end up doing is mistreating that person, right? So taking away that person's right to be treated with respect, and it's bad for you mostly, and it's bad for that person's feelings too. So it's good that you crushed that like hatred or like dislike right away?
So over like winter break, I had a job and my manager was like really annoying and just like micromanaging and like just getting on my nerves all the time and like cutting my hours for no reason, and not just me but like all the staff. And I remember I'd go home and just talk a lot of, you know, what about him to my mom and stuff. And he was like Muslim too, so I was like you're Muslim, like why are you being unfair and like taking away people's money who like are working barely above minimum wage and stuff. And I don't think it developed into hatred because I definitely don't hate anyone, but it was a really strong dislike. And my mom, she told me like exactly what was in this book. She was like, you know, if someone is doing you wrong, like you shouldn't talk bad about them because that takes away from your good deeds and they take it because, you know, you're like backbiting, even if it is true. So you should just like make dua for him even though you think he doesn't deserve it. And I just thought about it and then I was like, you know, I'm gonna try it. So at work, whenever he did something that bothered me, I'd just like, and just make a dua for him, like God guide him. And then it kind of made things easier for me a little bit because I know like it's not in my hands, it's in God's hands. And it just made work a little bit easier and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Definitely. That's the mother's wisdom. Yeah.
One thing that caught me when I was reading this, that the definition and treatment of hatred is only like a page and a half, and yet like this is one of the, like it says right here, arguably the disease of hatred is one of the most devastating forces in the world. So like we have to ask yourself, why is that? Why do people like hate and stuff like that? And another thing that caught me was the hadith. You guys probably already read it, but I'll just repeat it for those who haven't. The Prophet ﷺ was talking to his companions, and he asked them, "Do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to see a man of paradise?" And they asked who, and then so it's as if like Muhammad was like walking across, and we're like, this is our group. And Muhammad was walking, and then Prophet ﷺ points to that man. That man is going to paradise, is one of the people of paradise. So one of the companions, so like one of us, like Ubayd, went and followed Muhammad and see what his actions were, like what he did, and he found that he didn't like perform Salat al-Tahajjud, the night prayer, or anything like big. So it's like one of us, like we don't. Not that I know any of you guys, but like the norm isn't like, okay, I'm gonna wake up every night 2 o'clock in the morning and pray. But and he went to that man of Medina, and the companion asked the man like what the Prophet had said about him. The companion told the man what the Prophet had said about him, and if he did anything else special. The man replied, "The only thing I could think of is, other than what everybody else does, is that I make sure I never sleep with any rancour in my heart towards one another." So basically, like, I guess one thing we can learn from this is like before we sleep every night, we could like just like, I guess,
forgive.
Just think about your day.
Think about your
what you've been
days.
through, and then
Yeah.
people who kind of tick you off.
Yeah.
You know, just ask Allah to guide them, and also yourself, and to give yourself patience. You know, to be able to fight that. Anything else on hatred, guys? I'm gonna tell you right now, it's easier said than done. Just like, you know, you were saying that like, I guess it was kind of tough until, you know, your mom told you, you know, like that's what you should do. Like you got someone to remind you, and sometimes that person's not there, so it's even tougher for yourself. And that's something for us to keep aware, like in this group and in this MSA. You know, if you see someone, you know, kind of in the same situation, you know, even if they're not in this Halaqa, this is, you know, general knowledge. Like if you see someone in that kind of situation, don't like butt in, you know, if they're doing something, but like, you know, try to remind them and, you know, try to calm them down and be like, no, you know, it might be a little small thing, like, you know, she took your mechanical pencil and it was like your favorite one and she broke it or lost it or something, you know, just let something like that slide and, you know, just remember, you know, your purpose in this life is not about mechanical pencils and how many shirts you have. It's about, you know, the greater good and, you know, what you could do and how to control yourself and how to be a better Muslim and, you know, how to get to the final goal, which is paradise.
Okay, I wasn't gonna say anything because compared to Nepta's story, mine sounds really dumb. But, so the way that I think of it, or how I live my life by is, I don't know, like, forgive people because, like, you don't want you hating them to be the bad deed that gets you in hell. Because, like, I don't know, if that was the only thing that was holding you back, it's like, it's whatever they did or you think that they did, it's nothing compared to, like, going down there.
And hating them isn't gonna make their life worse.
Yeah.
It's gonna make your life worse.
I think you also have to learn how to not hate yourself, not beat yourself up for something, because that brings down your own energy and your own vibes as well.
Yeah.
That's true.
And that'll hold you back from becoming a better person.
Yeah, because when your mind's fixed on something that you did wrong, you begin to hate yourself, like you can't move on past it, and you can't really move on with life, which is also really bad.
I don't know, this is really random, but it reminded me of some guy I saw just a few days ago at Tech. He's just cheesing so hard. And I was like, I just saw him. He's just like walking. He had like a little Kroger bag and he's just like smiling at everyone. So even though that seems kind of weird, I kind of want to try that out. Just like, you know. And smiling is sunnah too. So, you know, if you smile at someone, it'll always cheer up their day. You know, ask people how they're doing.
It kind of like catches people off guard too. That's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it caught me off guard because it was just me and him, and he's just cheesing at me. I'm just like, hey. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's an international student, so he didn't understand me either. But I'm just joking. But you know, it's surprising. It really is. Just try it out sometime. See if you get people off guard. Go ahead.
Did we discuss how many we're going to go through like each week?
We said about 2 or 3, or depending, you know, we could go into 4 as well.
Are we trying to finish this book by the end of the semester?
Yeah, there's something like 25, and so we have about 3 months left. And so if we do 3 each time, then we should be able to finish it with time to spare.
Yeah.
So we can discuss things a bit more if we need to.
Inshallah, next week we'll have a more in-depth kind of thing.
You know, like one thing before we finish.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a quote by Imam al-Ghazali in which he says that a man who is imprisoned by his desires is lower than a beast. Right? So like someone who's like imprisoned or controlled by his or her own desires is less than a beast. Right? Because what does like say a cow in the field do? Right? It eats whatever grass it wants to eat. It, you know, goes to the bathroom wherever it wants to go. It lies down wherever it wants to lay down, right? So it's like living a life of like doing whatever it wants to do, right? It's whatever it desires. When it's hungry, it goes to the little pail, starts eating some like grain. When it's thirsty, it goes drink some water, sleeps the rest of the day. Like it's not really much going on in its life, right? So, and like again, going back to like the purpose of the purification of our hearts, right, is to discipline ourselves, so that it's not that our desires control us, but rather we control our desires, so that we're the masters of our own selves, rather than we're being, you know, like rather than like our desires are informing what we do. And this goes back to, if you go back to the introduction, there's in verse 8, the Imam says that there is no salvation like the heart's salvation, given that all limbs respond to its desires. So whatever your heart desires is what your limbs will desire. So once because we all like, do things that aren't right or mess up from time to time, but once the heart has been once the heart has reached salvation, has been salvaged, then the limbs will respond automatically to the heart. And going on to that, how if you think about the wording that Imam Ghazali used, the man who is the slave to his desires is imprisoned, right? So in order to be truly free as people, we should be the ones in control of our desires. And this goes back to, if you look on page 16, where it talks about freedom and purification. And he was talking about, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was talking about in his lecture, how even the president who was, I'm pretty sure he was talking about Bill Clinton, but he was a Rhodes Scholar and studied in Cambridge. He was a really smart man, right? One of the highest places in academia, shown by his academic life, I guess. And even then, he couldn't control his desires, right? When he had opportunity to do something bad, right, he did something bad, which is now that's what he's known for when you think about Clinton, right? So even though he has so much worldly stuff, he held ironically the position of the leader of America's seen as the leader of the free world, right? At least that's what it's called. But so anyways, he's the president of the leader of the free world, so he's the foremost leader. Yet he's so much of a slave to himself that he couldn't control desires in that one moment, right? So and Sheikh Hamza goes on to mention how we would call somebody like that Abd al-Hawa, right? The slave of his desire. And in order to be really free, truly free, that this is something that must be done. The purification of our hearts is something that must be done. It's and it mentions in the introduction poem too, for example, some scholars, they say it's a fard that you do whatever needs to be done in order to purify your heart. And it's something which we can talk a lot about, right? We can talk on forever, talk about how bad hatred is, talk about how bad miserliness is. But Islam is not, and the purification of the heart, which is one of the essences of Islam, is not really something that we just talk about or we just read about, right? Something that we need to actually implement into our lives for it to really become something real. Because Islam is something that you do. It's not necessarily something you just are. You're not just a Muslim, right? A Muslim is someone who submits to the will of Allah, right? So we need to actually submit rather than to just be being in a state of, just being a Muslim, right? We need to take some action upon that. And just one other example I thought about when I saw this part was how, a lot of times when people start smoking or something, right? They think they start doing it because they think it's cool, or they think that it gives them a little stress reliever or whatever. And then you'll always hear them say that I can quit whenever I want, right? I had plenty of friends in high school who they started smoking. And they're I was dude, what are you doing? You're gonna be spending $5 a day. You're gonna be addicted and all this stuff. They're no, man, I can quit whenever I want. I can quit whenever I want. Now when I go see them, every 5 minutes they're out smoking a jack, right? So it's something that's they become a slave to that. They become a slave to their desire, and that was such a way that the thing that they smoke, right, forces them to go to the store to buy more and to get up from whatever they're doing every 5 to 10 minutes to go smoke, right? It has that much of a control in their life. They can't smokers have a hard time sitting on airplanes because they can't go smoke, right? Or they have a hard time driving long times without stopping and having to smoke. So we don't want to be a smoker, right? Essentially, we want if the cigarette is our desires, or the desires that we see in this life, then what we want to be is someone who is above the influence, right? Clichéingly speaking, right? But so we want to be above the influence, so that where we actually don't even if we have the cigarette in our hands, where we put it down and we actually are able to stop, rather than, and this is the whole process of we're putting it down and stopping. rather than, you know, we're just whenever our inner desires tell us, oh, you need some nicotine, you get up and you go and smoke, right? So we want to be the masters of our own selves. So that's again just like, you know, because we didn't really go over the introduction that much, unless you guys did before I came here. But like that's one thing you want to keep in mind. You want to be the king within yourself. You don't want your desires to be, you know, leading you this way or that way, tugging at you.
Anything else to add, guys?
Doing everything, I'm learning something from I'm not just gonna say do that. But no, it's not that one. No, I think that one's like the most applicable. Other maybe like more than that one, because that you can like apply to so many different things. So I mean, I don't know. There's like you have to think of like I guess different scenarios and how to actually like remedy them. Like there's different depending on your hatred for whatever there's different ways to go about it. There's different like checks you can keep doing on yourself depending on whatever it is. I mean, it's different for everybody. And some solutions work for some people that don't work for others. Sometimes you need to involve other people or tell people whatever your problem is that you're trying to work on, even though it's like awkward or whatever, so that other people check you on it. Because if you just keep it in yourself, like, all right, I'm going to work on this, and you keep noticing you fall into the same mistake, like maybe you're not a big enough check for yourself. And I mean, it's like this story I heard with like this person's trying to like get up to pray Fajr, right? And they're trying to go to the masjid. So, but every time they tell themselves like they're trying to go, they fall back to sleep and they're like, oh, whatever. So then they tell their friend like, hey, whenever you go to Fajr, come by and pick me up. So then, the person keeps falling back to sleep, but their friend is right there to pick them up. And he's like, oh, like I don't even want to go, but my friend is here. Like, at that point, he's not going to Fajr because he's like wants to pray. He's going to Fajr because his friend's outside and he doesn't want to like keep him waiting. Like that's kind of messed up. He told him to come get. So even if you don't start doing it for the right reason, like you're doing it because you want to, you told your friend you're trying to get better at this, so you just want to prove to them that you're actually doing it. Like at least that gets you sort of in the right direction and it like starts you off on something. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm jumping around.
Yeah, it's like, pretty much that, and then it's like you follow the deen of the ones you accompany. So like if you have a good friend like that is willing to come pick you up, that is gonna start rubbing off on you. Aside from like someone who's just gonna be like, yeah, we'll get up for Fajr, and then he's like, he turns on the alarm, and then like right when you fall asleep, he just turns it back off. He's like, it's just like, okay, so stuff like that. Even, like even if you, it's for that. If it's for if you go to the masjid to pray, or if you go to the masjid, they always have like their weekly things, sirah and tajweed. Like even if you go and you don't really participate or you don't really know what's going on, but if you surround yourselves by people who are interested in that, who are trying to, you'll eventually fall under the same category as them.
I'm not even thinking about it just in like the sense of like surrounding yourself with people, but like just like holding yourself accountable and like even if you can't hold yourself accountable, like make somebody else hold you accountable. Like whatever you gotta do, just like get your foot in the door of like starting whatever like path you're trying to start on. Even if you're not like doing it for like the right reason of like, oh, I'm trying to like become a better person, but you're like, oh, I'm just trying to like save face in front of this person. Like if you let them in on like what you're trying to like ultimately be better at, and then you slowly start to like work toward it, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I don't know, like with the Fajr example.
Yeah.
You know that you want to like start praying Fajr at the masjid, but that's not why you get up every day at the beginning. Like you get up every day because your friend is outside, and like you like told him to come. So you're not going at that moment because you're like, yeah, I'm going to pray Fajr. You're going because you're like, dang it, like I told him to pick me up every day. Like why did I do that? I'm so stupid. Whatever. Like so then at that moment you're not like, oh yeah, I'm praying Fajr. You're like, oh god, my friend is outside.
Yeah.
But then like by the end of it, you do it for a week and you get like accustomed to it, and then you realize like, hey, I'm actually doing this thing that I told myself I would do, and you start to like realize you're actually making it to your goal in like a more roundabout way. But you find things to pull yourself along that path. So and for any of these whatever diseases, I mean, you know, you just have to think like concrete, I guess, steps if you recognize like a real problem. You know, because yeah, talking is nice, but yeah.
Doing is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, also keeping in mind with doing, like, so I think what we should do is like recap for each disease what the treatment is, so we can like start doing it to ourselves.
Yeah, so I think one thing that was interesting, and I guess what I kind of was like, how would you say, realistic or like actual doable like treatments of disease. Like the first one, miserliness, the like treatment was like gives zakat, which is like good and everything, but like how many of us actually do our own zakat? And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe one of us like puts like $2 or $3 like into the masjid box every now and then. But like all of these like diseases, they kind of root from like your desires, but also they're not mutually exclusive. Basically, they all come from you giving value to something that doesn't deserve value. You know, like money, or like lavishness, or like some meaningless thing that someone else has done that's caused you to have hatred to them, because at the end of the day, it really is meaningless. But again, that's all easier said than done. So for miserliness, my mom used to always say actually, "A'ti ma fil jayb, ya'tik ma fil ghayb." It literally means like give from what's in your pocket and you'll receive from the unseen. Sounds cooler in Arabic. So like one thing, and this is like I challenge like everyone here to do. It's a really good culture to start. Just like take one of your friends, go somewhere and eat, and then pay for it, without them even knowing about it. Just be like, I got this one, and pay for it. Just like imagine that, like how they feel, like they'd be like, no, don't pay. And that's a good culture to start. We don't see that happen very often. And I'm not talking about like your best friend that you see like every single day, and it doesn't mean that much. Like just go to like one of your friends you know you're kind of friends with, you don't really see that often. Just be like, hey, let's go have lunch, and then pay for it. You know, you don't have to give meaning to that money anymore. You're just doing it because it makes you feel good. That's like a really good way to like get rid of mindfulness. Wantonness, definitely one of the best ways is like volunteer activities. Like you start to feel like this. How many of you have like went camping or done something like that before? Like gone into the woods. Like, how did you feel when you like came home, like into your shower, and, like you showered? Like even if there was like no hot water, how did you feel? You're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, right? Or if you go do like a volunteer activity and you're like serving food, when you go home and your mom makes like that meal that you like hate, you still like, you appreciate it. So that's one way to deal with it is actually like doing volunteer and seeing people who are less fortunate. Because that definitely gives you perspective and gets rid of that want for lavishness. That's a little bit harder to do. And then the hatred one, I think that he hit it like right on the spot. Like make dua for the person. But yeah. So those are like, I guess, a little bit of some feasible things that we can do as students, especially the first one. Make that like a challenge. Start that culture here.
This is the guy who wants people to pay for it.
If you guys want to take me to D2, I'll have a sign-up sheet. Right?
Oh, wait, did you want to add on to that?
No, that's pretty much exactly what I was gonna say. So, put better.
Beautiful words, though. Does anyone have any other suggestions as to how to, combat?
Well, I just have a comment, not a
Okay.
suggestion, but I think it's kind of interesting how all the diseases of the heart, like when you follow your own desires, you're never happy. Like a miser person is never happy because he's always worrying about how much money he has or how much money he's wasted. And someone who hates is never happy, and someone who's
whatever the movie.
We could just say the Arab word, Arabic word.
They're always never have enough, so they're always trying to get more. So it's like in the end, like getting closer to Allah makes you happy. You just don't realize that till you start.
And also, like, one thing, like, when you start the treatments, like, make sure not to go overboard. You know, like Raga mentioned, like, don't start, like, fasting every single day till next Halaqa. It's like, you know, like, if you're not used to fasting or something, then just abstain from some food when you're, like, you know, late at night, like, oh, let me go grab another slice of pizza, like, actually, no, I'm not gonna do that, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not control myself. Or, like, it's just, like, small things like that. Or, like, say if you really want to eat a piece of chocolate, then you look at the chocolate and just give it to somebody else. Then, like, you know, like just, like, small things like that, like, leading up to that. Because they don't have the similar effect. And, like, and the other things are, you know, maybe go volunteer a day. Like Muhammad mentioned, or sit there and, like, you know, really contemplate, like, you know, do I want to be a miser? Do I want people to look at me like I'm a cheapskate? Like, if the answer is yes, then I guess you can be a miser. But I don't think any of us really want to be cheapskates, right? So, or want people to look at us like that. So, you know, that's good. And, like, buy your friends food, and for hatred, just make dua and just realize, like, how much of a negative impact, like, you know, like you guys mentioned, how much of a negative impact just hating someone can have. Like, it keeps you from reaching your full potential. And inshallah, we'll, like, make a list, like a small list, and email it out to everyone of, like, stuff you can do. It's like really want to make sure that we do, like, we actually do, like, do the work. We actually do what we're talking about, rather than just, like, you know, like what happens a lot of times. You can call it, like, the Muslim conference syndrome, or whatever you want. Like, you go places, you get on a spiritual high, you talk about it, you feel so good, like, yeah, man, totally, we need this. And then you go home and you're just sitting on your couch, like, not carrying, like, you know, carrying on just like how you did before. So we really want to make sure we don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk, right? So inshallah, we can do that. And inshallah, like, you know, push your friends to do it. Like, you don't necessarily have to, like, tell everyone, like, hey guys, so I'm fasting on Monday and Wednesday, and yeah, like, unless you guys want to do iftar together, that's different. But, like, don't
just tell them it's iftar and done. Just tell them it's dinner.
Yeah,
it's dinner.
So I mean, like, you know,
just happens to be after dark.
Yeah, but yeah, just do small things. Just be like, and also, the more sincere you are, the more help you receive from Allah. So just keep that sincerity and just try to do whatever you can do. So hopefully we can, you know, by the end of this book, actually see a change within ourselves as better people. Inshallah. Anyone else have anything to say?
I think a lot of these diseases have to do with the fact that people are so, like, into, like, instant gratification, and they just want to follow their desires and do what they want now. But I think people should look more into the future, and that goes for everything, not just from a religious standpoint, but, like, academically. Like, you don't really want to study, you don't want to do your work, but if you have that discipline and, you know, you don't go out when you have homework, then later on when you get the A in the class, you'll be happy. And, like, I think Dalia said that, you know, the miser will never be content because they just want more and more. So a person who is lazy, procrastinates, like, maybe the moment you're procrastinating, like, you feel good, you're watching Netflix, but then later on when you realize you have a test tomorrow and you didn't do what you were supposed to, that doesn't feel good. Just like the miser will like get the money but then be happy for that second but then want more. And it's kind of interesting because in psychology, we watched this video on kids. They were all given, like, a marshmallow. I don't know if anyone saw it, but, like, so the adult will be like, okay, so here's a marshmallow, and they, like, put it right in front of them, and they're like, you can have it now or later. And then they just leave and they close the door, and the kids are sitting there, and some of them will, like, pick it up and, like, sniff it and, like, lick it, bite it. Some of them will eat it, and, like, we can't be like those kids. We have to learn to not eat the marshmallow and I guess wait for later, because it's not all about your desires.
Yeah.
And it's not all about having what you want at that moment.
That's a really good example. And also, like, side fun fact, like, they said, like, the kids who, like, were able to abstain from eating the marshmallows, like, they got higher SAT scores,
Yeah,
too.
later on in
Later.
life,
Yeah,
they were smarter.
So it's kind of like if you can abstain from eating the marshmallow of dunya.
Yeah.
Halal marshmallow.
Halal marshmallows.
Yeah, so.
No, they actually had a full-blown study like that, but it had to do with cookies or something. It was like in England, and they actually followed each and every kid, like through their teens and then through their like lifetime, and then like there's this one guy who's just like a bum and kind of like a bully. He decided to eat that cookie, and then he ended up like, it was weird. He ended up like being like one of the guys that like cleans the horses or something like that. What is that called? The
dude?
No, the horse races or whatever.
Horse poops.
Hope pooper scooper.
Anyways, you know, like. Anyways, he was just like a little stable boy who just, you know,
Stable boy.
yeah, he amounted to nothing pretty much. And yeah, it's pretty sad.
Dang. So what if you like give a cookie to like your little brother and he
Yeah,
eats
and
it?
then you're just like, oh man, you're doomed. You're doomed. It's done.
I love your shoes. What happened to the cookies?
Oh, they're successful. I forgot. It was in high school, but it was just like this is one kid. He's all proper and everything, and they also look into.
That's an apt
he's
word.
like, he's like, yes, yes.
Horribly stained.
And then he like grows up. He's like some smart kid. He's like, yeah, you know, I'm, like doing college and all this. It's like, okay, you have a choice to go to high school or something. I forget.
All right.
Want to end with this dua at the end? Okay.
And we'll pray,
We'll do
a
a
chapter.
Thank you for letting me.
I guess we'll do great.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Purity belongs to you, O Allah. With your praises, I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except you. I seek forgiveness from you, and I repent to you. Amen.
Can we repeat that, just like so everyone can repeat it out loud?
Alright. In Arabic?
Yeah. So you say it once, and then
Alright.
we'll repeat it.
Subhanak Allahumma
سبحانك اللهم
وبحمدك
وبحمدك
أشهد أن لا إله
أشهد أن لا إله
إلا أنت
إلا أنت
أستغفرك
أستغفرك
وأتوب إليك.
وأتوب إليك.
Finish the Asr.
What's that?
Finish Asr. Asr.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.